The loner rancher waited for a common mail-order bride, but a woman too beautiful for him arrived. The sky stretched wide and merciless above the plains, painted in harsh blues and heavy gold, the kind of sky that pressed down on a man until he forgot the sound of another human voice. Eli had learned to live beneath it, to work until his muscles sang with exhaustion, to find silence where others might go mad. His land was rough, stubborn, but it was his, carved out by sweat and loneliness. Each day began with the groan of the barn door and ended with the crackle of the fire inside his cabin, a fire that warmed no one but himself. He did not believe himself remarkable, nor did he expect anyone else to think so. His face bore the sharp lines of a man weathered by sun and labor. His eyes carried the weight of too many unspoken years. Women in town looked past him, as though he were another fence post or shadow crossing the dirt road. He accepted it, because wanting more felt dangerous. Wanting meant disappointment, and disappointment had already carved enough scars into his heart. But as seasons bled into one another, loneliness crept deeper. It showed itself in the way the wind at night echoed louder through the halls of his cabin, in the way his meals tasted like dust without conversation, in the way his own reflection felt like that of a stranger. One winter evening, with the snow clawing at the windows, he sat at his small table, ink staining his fingers, and wrote a letter. His words were plain, awkward, stripped of flourish. He asked not for beauty, not for refinement, not for a miracle. He asked for a wife who could bear the silence, who could share the weight of the days, who would not flinch at a hard life. He sealed it with the heaviness of a man who did not believe his request was worthy of much. Weeks crawled by. He worked as he always had, but beneath every chore lay a thrum of restless anticipation. And then came the day when the stagecoach rolled into town. Eli stood at the edge of the dusty street, his boots rooted to the earth, his hat pulled low against the glare. The coach rattled to a halt, the horses tossing their manes as dust rose around them. People gathered, curious eyes drawn to the moment. Eli's chest tightened, expecting a modest figure to emerge, a woman draped in plain cloth. Someone who would match the quiet request he had sent into the world. The door opened, and the world tilted. She descended with the grace of a queen, her dress catching light as though woven from the sun itself. Her hair spilled over her shoulders in waves of dark fire, and her eyes, sharp and unafraid, swept the street before landing on him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She was too beautiful, too striking, too untouchable for this place of dust and cattle. Whispers rose like smoke. She won't last here. She doesn't belong in Eli's world. That's no common bride. Eli felt the truth pierce him with brutal clarity. This was not the woman he had expected, not the answer he believed he deserved. She was a vision from a life far beyond his reach, and every inch of him burned with the certainty that she would turn away the moment she saw what awaited her. But she did not turn. She walked toward him with steady steps, her gaze locked on his, her chin lifted against the weight of every whisper. When she reached him, silence fell. The town held its breath. Eli's throat tightened, his voice rough when he spoke his name. She answered with her own, soft yet resolute, a name that carried elegance like music. For a moment, nothing else existed. The dust swirled around their boots, the murmurs blurred into nothing, and he felt the strange, electric pull of fate. He led her to his wagon, his hands trembling as he helped her up. They rode in silence, the road stretching endlessly before them, the sky burning with late afternoon light. He stole glances at her, unable to reconcile the woman beside him with the life he lived. She sat straight, her hands folded, her eyes fixed on the horizon, as if she had already decided she belonged to this land. He could not understand it, could not believe it, and yet the truth sat beside him, close enough that he could hear the faint rhythm of her breath. When the ranch came into view, his chest clenched. The house was small, weathered by storms, standing stubbornly against the wilderness. The fences sagged, the barn bore scars of long winters. He braced for the look he dreaded, the recoil, the disappointment, the faint curl of disdain. But when she stepped down from the wagon, she did not flinch. She took in the land with steady eyes, her expression unreadable, and then she turned to him. The corner of her mouth curved, not into mockery or pity, but into something quiet and resolute. That night, as firelight flickered in the cabin, Eli found himself lost in the strangeness of her presence. She moved with grace, her hands delicate yet certain, as if she had been born to tame silence. He struggled for words, his tongue heavy, but she did not press him. Instead, she filled the spaces with small glances, with stillness that felt less like emptiness and more like promise. Eli lay awake long after she had gone to rest, staring at the beams above him, heart pounding with a mix of awe and dread. He had asked for an ordinary woman, someone simple, someone plain, but fate had delivered something far greater. And with that gift came the shadow of fear, the fear that such beauty, such presence, could not belong to him for long. Yet even as doubt gnawed at him, a truth deeper than fear settled in his bones. His life had already changed, and nothing could return it to what it had been. The first days passed like a strange dream. Eli moved through his chores with the weight of her presence behind him, each moment carrying the tremor of change. She followed him across the land, her skirts brushing the earth, her eyes watchful but not afraid. Where he expected complaint, he found silence. Where he expected resistance, he found an ease that unsettled him more than rejection would have. She seemed to belong even as she stood out, as if the wilderness itself had bent to welcome her. At night, they shared meals in the glow of the fire. She spoke little of her past, and Eli asked even less. Something in him feared the answers, feared knowing the truth that might prove she was not meant to stay. But in the quiet between them, he felt a pull that no explanation could name. Her beauty was not only in the curve of her face or the light in her eyes, it was in the way she met silence without flinching, in the way she carried herself as if she had nothing to prove. Yet the town did not forget. Each time Eli rode in for supplies, he felt the sting of whispers. Men nudged one another, eyes sharp with envy, their smirks carrying cruelty. Women shook their heads, muttering that she was too fine, too polished, too untouchable to last long. The weight of their judgment pressed against Eli, feeding the doubt that already burned inside him. What had he done to deserve her? What tether could keep a woman like that from slipping away? One evening, after a long day repairing fences, Eli found her standing at the edge of the pasture, her hair catching the fire of the setting sun. She held a letter in her hands, the paper trembling slightly between her fingers. He froze, his chest tightening with unspoken fear. When she turned, her eyes were wet but unbroken. "This came before I left," she said softly, her voice carrying both strength and ache. She handed him the paper, and he took it with clumsy fingers. The words bled across the page, pleas from someone who had once claimed her, promises of wealth, threats born of desperation. The letter spoke of a man who had pursued her, a man who had not wanted to let her go. Eli's throat burned. He wanted to ask if she had left him, if she had chosen Eli only to escape another. But the look in her eyes silenced him. She stepped closer, her hands steady as they brushed against his scarred knuckles. "I came here because I wanted something real," she whispered. "Not money, not fine houses, not the empty charm of men who believe they own the world. I wanted a man who could look at me and not see a prize, but a partner. You think I'm too much, Eli, but I am exactly where I want to be." Her words sank into him like rain into parched soil, yet doubt still lingered, sharp and restless. He feared the day that man from her past might appear, feared the day she might realize her choice had been a mistake. But he could not turn away from the fire in her voice, nor from the steady truth in her gaze. Life on the ranch tested them both. The work was grueling, the days unrelenting. She learned to mend fences, to milk goats, to gather eggs with hands that had once known softer tasks. When storms rolled across the land, she stood beside him, her hair whipping in the wind, her eyes defiant against the sky. When drought cracked the soil, she carried water with him, her shoulders trembling but unbroken. Every trial etched her deeper into the land, deeper into him, until he could no longer imagine his world without her steps across the dirt. Still, Eli battled the storm within himself. Nights came when he lay awake, staring at her silhouette in the dim light, and wondered why fate had given him more than he deserved. He tried to bury the fear, but it grew, gnawing at him like a wolf. It showed itself in sharp silences, in the way his words stumbled when he meant to speak tenderness. One night, after a long day that left his body raw, the storm broke. He told her of his fears, of the whispers in town, of the letter she had carried, of the shadow that haunted him every time he looked at her. His voice cracked, rough and raw, as he admitted that he loved her yet feared she would wake one day and see him as the small man the world believed him to be. She listened without flinching, her eyes deep and fierce. When he finished, she crossed the space between them and laid her hand against his chest, over the heart that pounded like thunder. "Do you not see, Eli?" she whispered. "You are the only man who never tried to own me, never tried to cage me. You gave me silence, and in that silence I found truth. The world may whisper, but I do not care for the world. I care for this land, this fire, and the man who stands before me. You fear losing me, but you already hold me. I will not leave, because I have nowhere else I wish to be." The words broke something inside him, not in pain, but in release. The fear that had chained him for so long began to fall away, replaced by a strength he had not known he carried. For the first time, he believed, not in chance, not in luck, but in her choice. Seasons turned. The town's whispers grew quieter, drowned out by time and the stubborn endurance of their bond. The man who had written the letter never came, his threats fading like smoke. What remained was the life they built, day by day, with calloused hands and quiet devotion. The land grew richer under their care, the cabin warmer with her laughter, the silence no longer heavy but alive. Eli was still the loner rancher, still scarred, still plain in the eyes of others. But beside him walked a woman too beautiful for the world, and yet she was his, not by accident, not by fate, but by her own choosing. And in that truth, he finally found peace. The ranch was no longer a place of solitude. It was a place of firelight and whispered promises, of storms weathered together, of love that grew not from grandeur but from grit, from truth, from the courage to hold on when the world doubted. Eli had asked for an ordinary bride, but life had given him something far greater, a partner who had turned his loneliness into a legacy, his silence into a song, his fear into a home. and in her eyes, he finally saw the reflection of the man he had always been but never believed himself to be. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now. Watch another unforgettable tale where destiny and courage collide in the way you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.